Does a sci-fi noir narrative interest you? Does adding a fast-paced twist to traditional turn-based strategy grab your attention? Are you a fan of killer soundtracks and unique visuals? If so, then take a seat and check this game out. Transistor is a game developed by Supergiant Games, the same creators of Bastion, Pyre, and Hades, and is set in the futuristic city of Cloudbank, where you take control of a famous singer known as Red. The opening has you pull a rad techno sword out of the sternum of a mysterious man whose consciousness now dwells in the sword, and takes the role of narrator. Red, on the other hand, serves as the silent protagonist. Now, while usually that role is reserved for jack dudes who are only capable of grunts and masculine screams, Red is silent due to her voice being stolen by the antagonist organization, the Camarada. The Camarada have unleashed a swarm of destructive robots known as the Process, which serve as the main obstacle between you and sweet, sweet revenge. I won't go into further details so that those who would like to play this game spoiler-free can. Instead, let's take a look at the visuals. The city of Cloudbank is a vibrantly colored collection of towers that make up your backdrop. The game's viewpoint is isometric as you travel through vacant streets and alleys. Supergiant maintains a secluded atmosphere to showcase the effect the Process has had on the once gleaming city. Even the robots you fight have little semblance to humans. The naming schemes of these enemies is decided by the man in the Transistor, who gives them impromptu nicknames based on how they look or act. Some examples include Creep, Clucker, Fetch, and Wit. Cloudbank is the only setting you will see in Transistor. This is by no means a negative. The locations you visit, cutscenes you experience, and backdrops you take in from Cloudbank are all full of hand-painted artwork that is sure to captivate. The game's visual direction would be incomplete without a solid sound design, especially given the fact you take the role of a singer. Well, no worries, because Supergiant brings its A-game. The soundtrack created by Darren Korb perfectly matches the tone and is chock full of bangers. When you use one of the key abilities that stops time, the soundtrack changes to add Red's humming voice, which fills the air with a relaxing feeling as you plot your next course of actions, even though when you give it some fun, it is quite sad. All Red can do is hum after the Camarada stole her voice. Out of combat, if you just have a hankering to hum, you have a dedicated button that shines a spotlight on Red as she hums and clutches the transistor tight. Even though Red is mute now, she wasn't always, so the soundtrack does feature some songs that have lyrics sung by Ashley Barrett. After hearing one of these songs in a cutscene, you can hear one of the bosses sing along in a creepy, corrupted voice, which is made creepier after learning more about the corrupted character. Moments like these illustrate the terror the Process has brought on this world.
Look who it is.
Wow, bet she does good at parties. While you remain silent through the terror, the man in the Transistor narrates throughout. The voice acting is heartfelt and compelling. In the beginning, I was annoyed at the amount the narrator spoke, but that annoyance did not last long, and I became attached to the character voiced by Logan Cunningham.
Don't be gone. Please don't be gone. I can't. I'm here. I'm over here. Hey. Is that you?
I also found it neat that in order to communicate with the Transistor, Red must type out messages on terminals that you find throughout the world. Transistor takes its audio seriously, and it shows. Everything from music to sound effects to voice acting are all handled with care, which is something I appreciate. Hey, whoa, do you hear that? That's like an electric scooter? Maybe like a dirt bike? No, I know what it is. It's a Segway. A segue into gameplay. A gameplay segue. Okay, so the game is centered around the Transistor's functions, which are what you use to deal damage, and your turn ability that lets you freeze time and gives you a limited amount of function uses and movement. Once you use turn, it along with all other functions are put on a cooldown, leaving you defenseless until it recharges. There are some functions that work even with turn on cooldown, but for the most part, functions are unusable after using turn, so you gotta use it wisely. Every function can be utilized in 3 different ways: as an active, an upgrade, or a passive. Actives are abilities you trigger manually, upgrades are used to enhance actives, and passives are abilities triggered automatically. Most people who play games are familiar with these concepts, but what makes Transistor unique is that every function you acquire can be applied to any of these positions. Just imagine Call of Duty Create a class, but you can make the perk Cold-Blooded your weapon with an AK-47 as its attachment, and heck, let's put a red dot in your perk slot. By the end of the game, you unlock 4 active slots, 2 upgrade slots per active, and 4 passive slots leading to many customization options. Each function does have a number of memory, and your build has to be under the memory total, but no worries, you gain memory as the game progresses. The strong customization allows for creative strategy to evolving problems. No, seriously, the game doesn't just add new enemies throughout, but changes the old ones too. As you progress, certain enemies level up and develop more health and new abilities. Some develop the ability to disrupt you out of turn, some gain the ability to go invisible, and some are able to pull you into them, and so on. Transistor constantly pushes you to mix and match functions. In fact, when you run out of HP, it overloads the function with the most memory, rendering it unusable. In order to get it back, you must reach the next 2 checkpoints. I find this feature interesting because it gives you a consequence for failing without making you have to completely restart. Of course, if all your functions overload, you get to restart from a previous checkpoint. Between receiving new slots in memory, receiving new functions, meeting new enemies, previous enemies evolving, and functions overloading, you never stop changing your strategy. Supergiant's approach to what failure means and what difficulty can be is why I enjoy the game so thoroughly. Transistor takes a unique approach to difficulty using a mechanic known as limiters. As you level up, you will get the choice between 2 limiters which will each offer a change in gameplay at your expense. The more difficult the limiter, the more XP earned, and it is your choice as to how many you want to activate as you collect them. The limiters provide a better experience for those who want to fine-tune the challenge of the game, and rewards those who do so. Receiving them at regular intervals allows players to ease into them one by one instead of overwhelming the player by having them all unlocked from the start. The idea of slowly delivering more options is pretty standard game design, but it is worth noting that the pacing of the delivery is executed very well. By the end of the game, you will have access to 16 unique functions and 10 unique limiters. The drip feed of new additions to the game and the amount of options you have makes for a compelling experience that will have you eager to level up just to see how the game changes next. The way Transistor handles combat and XP is interesting as well. As you travel the city, you will get locked into a small area and can't leave until you eliminate all of the process. Each enemy type provides a new challenge to the battle, so you have to manage which ones you want to destroy first. Destroying one of your enemies leads to them dropping a cell. If you don't pick up said cell in time, it will respawn the enemy you just killed. You receive XP after successfully defeating all the process in the encounter, and each encounter is curated by Supergiant, so the game's enemy distribution feels balanced. When you go into the New Game Plus, however, the enemies are procedurally generated, which adds variety, but takes away some of the balance the first playthrough had. New Game Plus also lets you earn functions a second time over, which you can use as upgrades to the same function, or just use the same function in 2 different slots. This does add some replay value that I did not expect. It makes you wonder how each function will interact with itself, which taps into that original drive to level up that the first playthrough had. Transistor is a beautifully drawn game with a soundtrack that is worth a listen outside of the game itself. The gameplay is compelling and allows you to approach combat scenarios creatively. It features a unique environment that perpetuates a feeling of loneliness. It follows a noir-style narrative that has a tone fit for the gameplay, setting, and music. The way it handles difficulty allows for the player to curate how hard they want the game to be. The game is well paced and allows the player to get unlocks in a way that leads to smooth transition and having literal thousands of options, and introduces new enemies and enemy abilities that increase the challenge in just the right way. I recommend that if you have this game sitting in your library and haven't played it, then make it the next game you play. If you don't own the game, it is worth the price of admission, so check it out. Thank you for sticking around this long in the video. If I missed something about the game, let me know in the comments. I'll be reading and responding to all of them. Until the next time, like it up, sub it up, tear it up.